PolicyBazaar.com. हर family होगी insured. Co-powered by the bold look of Kohler. Kirloskar.
Good evening and welcome. Did the world react in haste in presuming the Israel Defense Forces guilty of attacking a Gaza hospital, believing that 500 people have died? In the light of the evidence the IDF has now put out and the absence of evidence on the part of the Hamas, what does the investigation so far suggest? A detailed India Today open source investigation is my top focus on the Newstrack.
Big turning point in Israel-Hamas war. Gaza hospital blast divides the world. Claims and counterclaims fly. Did Israel bomb hospital? Or did Islamic Jihad rocket misfire? Hamas hospital strike claim false? Big focus on Newstrack.
Before we get into our open source investigation, let me take you through the headlines I'm tracking tonight. Israel offensive intensifies. Netanyahu says he won't allow his territory for humanitarian aid to Gaza. Lebanon border also simmers. Prime Minister Modi speaks to the President of the Palestinian Authority, condoles the loss of civilian lives at the hospital blast in Gaza. PM Modi reiterates India's long-standing principles stand on the Israel-Palestine issue. Akhilesh Yadav hints at a rethink on staying on in the India alliance, accuses the Congress of fooling other parties. This after seat-sharing talks fail in Madhya Pradesh. State of war, Telangana hots up. BRS hits back after Rahul Gandhi called the BRS the B team of the BJP. KTR says Congress is the C team or a team of chores. Team India cruising in their chase of 257 runs against Bangladesh. India could go to the top of the points table with a win. The blast at a Gaza city hospital has become a major flashpoint in the Israel-Hamas war. Gaza authorities claim hundreds of civilians were killed. They blame the Israeli airstrikes for the attack. The Israel Defense Forces, meanwhile, claim it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that misfired. What's the truth as we know it at the moment? India Today's open source investigation team analyzed the satellite images and the videos of the blast. Ankit Kumar with our lead story tonight.
October 17, Gaza City. Explosion at the Al Ali Arab Hospital. Hours later, blame game continues. Gaza officials blame Israeli airstrike. The Israel army blames a rocket misfired by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists.
It's Palestinian terrorist organizations that all the time are shooting and targeting civilians. It's only illustrating the way they are hiding between citizens, and they shoot this missile. By the way, I don't know if they did it in purpose or it was a mistake.
So what really happened? India Today's open source intelligence team analyzed the pictures and videos posted online. Satellite images reveal a discolored blast area. the parking lot of the hospital compound. There's no structural damage to adjacent buildings. There seem to be no visible signs of a large crater in the parking lot or any substantial damage to the buildings close by. These signs make the aerial bombing theory less plausible. Video footage released by the Israel Defense Force from the morning hours also shows just burnt cars. The hospital building seems intact. So were hundreds really killed, as Gaza officials claimed? Another set of aerial images released by Israel shows only shrapnels on the building roof. The United States has already given a clean chit to Israel.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
The UK has said it's establishing facts independently.
I know the whole House will have been shocked by the scenes at Al Ali Hospital. Any loss of innocent life is a dreadful tragedy. Our intelligence services have been rapidly analysing the evidence to independently establish the facts.
For now, there appear to be more clues suggesting that the massacre was likely a rocket failure than a targeted bombing from the skies. With Bidisha Saha and Ankit Kumar, Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining me now live on the Newstrack is Major Doron Spielman, spokesperson of the Israel Defense Forces. Major Doron, welcome. I want to start by asking you about this massive outcry after 471 civilians were allegedly killed in a hospital in Gaza. The Hamas earlier blamed the Israel Defense Forces. You've now put out audio tapes, satellite images seem to suggest that it didn't happen because of a missile strike from Israel. But do you think it's really now down to public perception, where it's become a lightning rod of public opinion on the Arab street, and it's really turning into a Gulf Arab versus the Western world kind of situation, where this is as much a battle that's being fought for perception as it is on the battlefield?
Well, I can tell you that from my perspective, what's most important here are the facts. I believe at the end of the day, if you move forward with the truth, even if certain people are swayed initially and deceived, as it were, by Hamas and many media outlets in the world, that immediately, it's unbelievable, Hamas, right after the explosion, blamed Israel. And none of these media outlets, or the vast majority of the media outlets, didn't stop to say, how can we cite Hamas as a credible source? Who is Hamas? Hamas are the same organization that 13 days ago invaded Israel, slaughtered our civilians, slaughtered men, women, and children, slaughtered babies, mutilated babies, one of which we just found this morning, a mother and her 5-year-old child. We found their burnt bodies in the attic of a house where they were hiding from terrorists who literally burnt them alive, burnt them until they died. This is the organization we're going to trust. So I really think that it's the world needs to view with a large degree of skepticism anything that they hear coming from Gaza, because most things that are coming from Gaza are coming from Hamas. And as we've shown, Hamas has no problem lying to the entire world.
There'll be those who will be watching and those who are skeptical of the Israel Defense Forces who may turn around and ask you, Major Doron, how do we believe the authenticity of the evidence put out by the IDF? Take the audio tape as an example. These could just be two people put up by the IDF having this conversation with each other, which the Israel Defense Forces later release. What do you have to say about the credibility of the evidence put out by the Israeli Defense Forces to back their claim?
I think the very basis of this conversation is really mistaken. To even begin to compare Israel, a Western democracy, a country that upholds the finest democratic and moral ideals, to Hamas, a radical terror organization similar to those you even have in your own country, and similar to ISIS, who chops apart people. I think any comparison between these two are wrong. In any case, if you look at what we released from the hospital, you don't need to take my word for it. Look at it yourself. It's not even our footage. It's Al Jazeera footage, meaning it's footage that came out from Al Jazeera that shows a rocket, a series of rockets fired by Palestinian Islamic Jihad at the same time as the hospital blast, shows a rocket malfunctioning and heading towards the ground and exploding. Let me ask you, sir, what more information would it take for me to convince you that Hamas are the ones that did this?
You know, the other fact which adds to what you're saying is that the building largely seems to be in place. This Islamic Jihad rocket actually fell into a parking lot, leading many to wonder whether that claim of 471 people dying is even true, because if this rocket actually fell into a parking lot, there are not 400 people standing there. If the whole hospital building had come down, which now satellite pictures suggest isn't the case, then that may still be possible. What do you think actually happened, Major Doron?
I think that most likely, again, I just want to say, even if one civilian was killed, my heart goes out to them. But I think that we cannot trust anything Hamas says. And I think you've pointed it out. They claimed a rocket hit a hospital and Israel did it. We know Israel did not do it, and the rocket did not even hit the hospital. It hit the parking lot. Now, you know, if there were 500 people, God forbid, that had died, that would be a world disaster. That it would take days and days to address that kind of damage. After 6 hours, that site was cleared. So really, I think, going back to the media and your initial question about perception, there are right now reporters on Gaza. Go to the site. I know Hamas aren't going to let you in because Hamas doesn't want to reveal to you really what happened, but go to your site, try to get in, try to get the footage and see, because Hamas, the same organization, if they have no conscience about killing, they certainly have no conscience about lying about the truth, lying about the facts. So I think your question is well based, and I don't believe that they are saying the truth.
What do you have to say, Major Doron, about humanitarian aid being blocked, not being allowed to come into the Gaza Strip, that all Palestinians are not supporters of the Hamas, that the Hamas does face opposition and everyone is suffering as collateral damage, and that Israel should allow, whether it's from Egypt or from Israel itself, for some humanitarian aid to reach civilians in the Gaza Strip?
I first want to say that our war is not with the people of Gaza. We made that very clear. We've gone to enormous expense and time of days and days asking them to please move out of the way of where the battle is taking place. I do think, though, sir, that there's a question that the world is not asking that it needs to ask. What was Hamas's contingency plan for its people? Meaning, when Hamas invaded Israel and massacred over 1,000 people, took innocent men, women, and children, babies, grandmothers as hostages, what did it think we would do? What would India do? What would Pakistan do? What would any country in the world do in that type of situation? What were they thinking was going to happen with their civilians? They claim to be the protector of the civilians in Gaza, and all they do is make the life of the civilians in Gaza hell. And therefore, they are responsible for these civilians. They should have thought about this in advance. That's the reality.
Are you concerned that all this sporadic fire that we're seeing from southern Lebanon is likely to lead to a two-pronged attack, that you will have to deal with the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and this is very likely to escalate into a battle between the IDF and the Hezbollah as well?
We are very much looking at the northern border of Israel, looking very closely at Hezbollah, who is, again, a radical terror organization, not dissimilar from Hamas. They're both supported by Iran and directed by Iran. And we know that Iran are pulling the strings here. They're looking to divert us away from the conflict in Gaza and pull us into northern confrontation. We don't want to go there. We've sent very clear messages to Hezbollah and to the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people. Stay out of this war. It is between us and Hamas. We are not looking to spread this to the north. We've seen an escalation in the north. We respond immediately to every attack. We've been knocking out their watchtowers, their missile silos, and always responding, but we are not looking for this to grow. And I think the American presence in the region, including the American battleships that you now have in the Mediterranean Sea, are sending a clear message to any terror actors in the region. As President Biden said, no, no, no. Stay out of this.
Major Doron Spielman for joining me on the Newstrack. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
The Gaza hospital blast paused the Israeli airstrikes for a day, but now the borders have lit up again. Through the day, Israeli artillery was booming, troops moving closer to Gaza. India Today's Gaurav Sawant was reporting from the front line. Here is his latest dispatch.
It's day 13 of Israel-Hamas war. Rockets are flying. Tanks ready to roll into Gaza. India Today, which is reporting from the war zone, captured the unprecedented escalation.
We are at the fence. The plumes of smoke that you see rising right behind me, and let me try and show you those plumes of smoke rising in that area right in front of you, there and there. Now, according to the Israeli army, these are strongholds of Hamas that are being targeted. This is where Hamas has leadership, operational bases, logistics centers, and also foxholes or mouth of the tunnel. Now, the mouth of the tunnels are being destroyed. Ammunition and those bombs are being used that penetrate the ground and then explode. The aim is to ensure Hamas terrorists are neutralized as quickly as possible.
Amid the raging war, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asserted Israel will not prevent aid entering Gaza from Egypt, but won't allow any relief from its territory.
We have to release the hostages. You have nationals. Understand that, I know you do, that we have their children, babies, women, elderly, Holocaust survivors, and your nationals. And we have to work together in every way possible, and we're doing that, to get them back.
The offer, however, comes with conditions. Netanyahu asserted that there will be no help to Gaza until hostages are returned. The Egypt-Gaza corridor will open only for humanitarian aid. The Israeli Prime Minister also sought an assurance that humanitarian aid supplies won't reach Hamas terrorists. And just as Israel is shrinking aid to the already handicapped Gaza, the US President on Thursday announced $100 million aid for Gazans.
$100 million in new U.S. funding for humanitarian assistance in both Gaza and the West Bank. This money will support more than 1 million displaced and conflict-affected Palestinians, including emergency needs in Gaza.
After Biden, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak too visited war-torn Israel to express support for a nation still grappling with the aftermath of an October 7 attack carried out by Hamas terrorists.
We absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself in line with international law, to go after Hamas, to take back hostages, deter further incursions, and to strengthen your security for the long term.
Israel is facing a two-front war. Israeli forces have hit Hezbollah terror targets in southern Lebanon, triggering fears that the war will suck in more players. Lebanon-based Hezbollah is backed by Iran.
I'm currently standing at one of the dangerous zones on earth. This is the place where 3 journalists got hit by the Israeli rocket and one of them killed, 5 others got injured. This is Al-Mushab area of the southern Lebanon. You can see the fence. This is the border between the North Israel and the South Lebanon. Here since yesterday evening, thousands of rockets had been traded between Hezbollah and the Israeli army. We have got reports that many houses and Hezbollah locations had been hit by the artillery fire.
The war between Israel and Hamas is going to be a long-drawn battle, as Tel Aviv has vowed they won't stop till every Hamas terrorist is eliminated. With Gaurav Sawant in Israel and Ashraf Wani in South Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining me now on the Newstrack to talk about that charge of 500-odd civilians being killed in the Gaza Strip, so far not backed with evidence, and whether this battle is really about propaganda and whether everyone made a mistake in blindly believing what the Hamas said. And can the IDF's evidence be taken at face value? I have with me Rami Shat, Egyptian-Palestinian activist, Helit Barrel, former director at the Israeli National Security Council, Sacha Reutemann, Chief Executive of Combat Anti-Semitism Movement. He used to head digital operations of the IDF. I want to go across to Sacha Reutemann first. As somebody who headed digital ops at IDF, your sense of the satellite images that have been put out, which seem to suggest that the rocket missile or whatever it was actually fell into the parking lot, not on the building, and the fact that there hasn't been visual evidence of 500 bodies, does that all seem to suggest that maybe the Hamas used that moment to overstate the damage and to try and scuttle President Biden's trip to the Mideast, where ultimately the Egyptian and the Palestinian Jordanian leaders didn't meet him? So they whipped up this frenzy, leveled this dramatic charge, basically to push their political narrative.
Yes, thank you very much for this introduction and to place the narrative very straightforward. And I think this is very important what you said, as we haven't saw the body. And it was reported that it's not hundreds of deaths, but dozens of deaths. Now, the other issue is the firing of the rocket. It's been proven by intelligence of the IDF that these rockets have been fired by the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. And I don't think that has ever happened that Israel has to prove so much that they are right. The fact that Israel and the Hamas, a terrorist organization, are put on the same stage of credibility is very problematic. We're working here with a terrorist organization that is known to use human shield as their strategy, as the military strategy. They use the human of Gaza. They target them because this is what makes them credibility. The credibility of Hamas to win their war is to have as many as possible Gazan dead. On the other side, in Israel, we try to protect life as much as possible. So we don't have the same set of values. No, definitely.
Now, Rami Shah,
yes.
Let's look at the evidence that we have. Yes, most certainly people died, and that's always very unfortunate. Even one death is bad enough. But to say that almost 500 people died and then not present bodies, if there were 500 dead bodies from the way Hamas does propaganda, they'd have them lining up at one place, body after body. That hasn't been done. Secondly, visual images seem to suggest that the rocket actually came from the Gaza side. Now, whether this is Hamas or Islamic Jihad, we don't know. Plus, there isn't a crater. If an Israeli missile had actually come in, it's fallen on the parking lot and not on the actual hospital. So was the Hamas just building this up for their political narrative?
Let me just interrupt here. It's been clear and proven that the destruction on the Gaza hospital of this case was not done by the Israeli army, period. This is not discussion anymore at all. All the evidence are there.
Let Rami Shah respond to this. Mr. Shah, do you accept that the evidence hasn't been adding up, that the Israelis have put up very strong defense to suggest that the rocket actually came from within Gaza?
I think the lies and propaganda done by the Israeli army is not going to fool your audience. Your audience is much smarter than that. There's a context of 75 years of occupation and annihilation of Palestinian people. Israel was built through ethnic cleansing and continued to expand through ethnic cleansing. Today, in the last 12 days, we have seen 3,785 till today in the morning, civilian killed, including 1,000 children burned under Israeli attacks with napalm, with white phosphor, with different kind of ammunition. We've seen targeting of houses, of homes, of students, of schools, of UNRWA and UN places hosting refugees. The attacks on hospitals is continuing. This particular hospital had got a warning from the Israeli army a day before, and the owners and the workers in the place have called the Archduchy in England, telling them of the Israeli warnings and the shots they shot near the hospital. And they told them, don't worry, they will never dare to attack a hospital. The second day,
but sir, Mr. Shah, now there is satellite imagery which shows that the missile didn't fall on the building, it's fallen on the parking lot. You can see that in the satellite images.
Sir, you can never trust Israeli surveillance. The Israeli surveillance that denied the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh, the Israeli surveillance that denied the killing of thousands of Palestinians, thousands of Palestinians even before the 7th of October. Every single day in this last year, we've seen Israeli army attacking civilians in Jenin, in Tol Karim. Today, there's a massacre this last hour in Tol Karim, killing 12 civilian Palestinians. with army officers. Have that related to any of those lies and propaganda? These are called atrocity propaganda. It's trying to put atrocity on your foe to use it against them at the end. In your show just right now, one officer said that was a Hamas rocket, and the other one said it was a jihad rocket. They have to perfect their lies to be able to fool the world. The whole world, not just in the Arab world, realizes that there is an ethnic cleansing and genocide happening in Gaza, and this must stop. Those crimes that's against humanity must stop. The continuous targeting killing. You can look at the words of all Israeli politicians and army using words like Palestinians are not humans, they're animals. Netanyahu saying that the children of darkness. This is all preparation for a continuation of genocide that's happening to Palestine. Today,
Khalid Barrel, the quality of the technical evidence put out by the Israeli Defense Forces being questioned, not just by Palestinians, but by many others in the Arab world.
No, the reality has not been questioned. I'm sorry.
Just one second. One second. Can Khalid Barrel come in, please? That this is evidence that's been put out. We don't know who these two voices are. They're two people talking to each other. They could be Hamas activists. They could be just two people put up by Israel to talk to each other. How do we believe that this is true? And how do we believe that the evidence that's being called technical evidence will actually hold? Because the case that's being cited is the death of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was shot in the head while covering an Israeli military raid in the West Bank in May 2022. The Israeli Defense Forces initially denied that they were behind her shooting, but ultimately they had to accept that they killed her accidentally.
First of all, I want to say that I've heard words being thrown around here like crimes against humanity and genocide and ethnic cleansing, and all of those did indeed happen in Israel by Hamas, and nobody's questioning that. So it's nice to have a war of narratives for some people. I am tired of this discussion of narratives, which is what is going on about this rocket in the hospital, because the truth is not really in question. And let me tell you something, the truth matters. It matters more than narrative discussions and arguments. It matters that the Islamic Jihad is absolutely willing to put rocket launchers behind a hospital of its own people. This isn't news. This happens every time. How Palestinians will perpetuate the narrative that actually harms their own people in Gaza. What you are doing is supporting Hamas. And we all know what Hamas is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. So these narrative discussions, you want to win some war of publicity. Do you care about the human beings in Gaza? Because I feel like everybody in the world, including Israel, the United States, the UK, cares more about this than some of the people who are promoting these lies, all of which are meant to do what? Create legitimacy for Hamas to continue to create tragedies and hold civilian population hostage, not only the Israeli hostages, but its own entire civilian population. So that I have to get out of the way first and foremost. Second, I want to say it's not really in question. It has been checked not only by the Israeli forces, it has been checked by the United States. It has been checked by the UK. I find it almost offensive that someone would take the word of Hamas at the same level of legitimacy that they would take the word of the state of Israel. But they went ahead and did that. And the United Nations issued a deplorable statement about that. And as far as I know, hasn't yet retracted, even though the truth is out there. And I'm going to say it once again. The truth matters more than whether you made a wrong statement and then had to retract it. You mentioned Shireen Abu Akleh, a tragedy. And the IDF spokesman at the time came out and gave an erroneous message and therefore went back and took responsibility. Was it forced to? Wasn't it forced to? It took responsibility. Hamas will never do it. The proponents of Hamas will never do it. It will never happen. And the reason why the IDF took more than an hour to come out and make sure that it gives a precise statement about what did and didn't happen was exactly those kind of incidents before. It was thoroughly checked before anything was said, and it was rechecked by the United States. It was rechecked by the UK and others. So I am done with this discussion. It's true, but that's not even the question. Your speaker doesn't even care if it's true. He cares about winning an argument, not about saving human lives.
Isa Amro, founder of the Youth Against Settlements. Now, here are the facts as we know him. We don't know whether it's the Islamic Jihad or the Hamas that fired, but in those images, rockets can be seen being fired from very close to where that hospital stood. Point number two, we haven't seen 500 dead bodies. Of course, people died, and that's terribly unfortunate, but we haven't seen, you've leveled a certain charge and then not been able to back it. All the evidence that's come so far has come from the Israeli side, including satellite images which are incontrovertible, which show that the building is still standing, that whatever it was, missile or rocket, it fell on the parking lot, raising very serious questions about the kind of propaganda that the Hamas is up to, apart from all the terror.
Okay. I have very long experience in documenting Israeli human rights violations, and especially the Israeli military human rights violations. I worked with B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, to document that violations. From my own experience on the field, on the ground, from many wars in Gaza, Israeli army lied many times. And this time they are lying. I will give you a small fact now. The voice recording Israel published, there is a contradiction between the recording and the videos they showed. This is one hand. It's different locations, okay? Second, the recording itself, it's not a Gazan's accent. My accent now, everybody in Palestine will know that I'm from Hebron, Khalili, because we have a special accent in Hebron, in Nablus, in Jerusalem, and in Gaza. So it's a completely different accent. Channel 4 in UK announced that it's a false voice recording. So if there is something false in the Israeli evidence they talk about, it means everything is false. But for me, to be very honest with you, I want the Israelis who are talking in behalf of Israel now to accept an independent investigation, international investigation, to go to Gaza and investigate targeting the hospital. Is it the first time they target hospitals? No. 2014, they targeted hospitals. In the past, they targeted hospitals. And they claim that terrorists are hiding in the hospitals. So please stop talking about who did it. Let's stop the catastrophe. Let's open the borders for the humanitarian aid. Israel is preventing food, preventing water, blocking electricity from the people in Gaza. 2.3 million civilians now without water, without food, without medical aid. Egypt now is pushing, the United States is pushing to open a humanitarian corridor. So please, let's do that. Let's learn from the mistakes. Let's not blame each other.
Sacha Reutemann, respond to whether Israel would be okay with an independent investigation. Let independent forensic experts come in, look at the site. Also raising questions about the accent of the two Hamas operatives talking to each other, saying anybody can tell you that these aren't Gazan dialects. This is not somebody local. This has been shot by the IDF and released as part of its propaganda.
Yes, so I will not comment on that because I think that the evidence are the evidence and should be accepted, period. This is a war. Terror organization killed their own people, period. Which organization? We don't know. I don't know. A rocket from Gaza landed into a parking slot of the hospital and killed dozens of people, period. This rocket is not coming from Israel. There was not any plane, not in a helicopter, neither artillery fire in this place at the time. Zero, period. From that, there is only one rocket filmed from Gaza into Gaza. That's the evidence. That's been filmed by Al Jazeera in live, that's been recorded by cameras from Nativ Asara. It's been demonstrated by dozens of evidence, and this you need to accept. Now, I have another question. You are speaking here about Israel, and Israel. I would like to hear two other speakers, and I would like to hear your voices condemning the actions of Hamas against the Israelis that have been murdered in Israel with a genocide crime because it was organized, dedicated, and by international law, it answers every definition of genocide. And you can look at the international law. I would like to hear your voices.
Isa Amro, respond to what we are hearing. Are you, at the very least, willing to come out and strongly condemn the Hamas for the manner in which they perpetrated these dastardly atrocities and committed this barbaric act of terror on Israeli soil?
He didn't answer first about the International Independent Investigation Committee to investigate the Al Ahli Hospital massacre.
Yeah,
No, but instead of this whataboutery, why don't you respond to the question that's being asked at this moment? Are you, at the very least, and surely it can't be very difficult, willing to come out and openly condemn what the Hamas did in Israel on the 7th of October?
We, the Palestinians, we are against any targeting of civilians. We want Israel, we want Hamas, we want everybody to fulfill the international law, Geneva Convention, and respect protecting all civilians. All civilians should be completely protected and away from any kind of harm, any kind of killing, any kind of fear, any kind of displacement. This is and I'm a non-violence activist, by the way. I'm advocating for non-violence resistance in the West Bank. I was arrested, detained, beaten, indicted, convicted by the Israeli military for my own non-violence resistance. October 7th, I was tortured. Me, Isa, look to my hands. I was tortured all over my body by the Israeli settlers and by the Israeli soldiers for 10 hours. I was tortured, beaten by the Israeli soldiers and settlers. And my Israeli lawyer didn't find me for 10 hours. Just because I am a human rights defender and a non-violence activist who's calling for peace, who's calling to implement the international law on us and on the Israelis. This is what we want. We don't want to keep talking about symptoms. We want to talk about the main causes of this conflict. Palestinians should be treated as a nation. We want to be treated as a nation with full rights, with freedom, with justice, with equality, according to the international law. This is what we want. This is what we are asking for as Palestinians. If Hamas did violate
Sacha Reutemann is saying, of course they criticize the violence, but is Israel okay with an independent international probe? You didn't respond to that, he says.
This is not a question to ask me. You invite you as the government of Israel. I'm not the governor of Israel. I didn't hear from you any condemnation of Hamas. And I have the same question to you. Do you condemn Hamas using their own population as human shield? You speak about human rights. You speak about human values. Where are the human values of Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other organizations in Gaza? The block roads, when the IDF come to the north of Gaza, they call every house, every place, they say you need to evacuate because you have a lot of terrorists in your places. And Hamas say, no, you're staying in your house because you're going to be targeted by the IDF and we need your pictures to be on the news because this is how we build our legitimacy. Or you respond to that. This is your violation of human life. Or you respond that every rocket in Gaza Strip are fired from our civilian house. Every part of Gaza Strip, there is no one military base, official military base. The IDF has military base. Hamas is based in every house, in every place in Gaza. This is a violation of basic human rights by every international law.
Respond to the operating tactics of the Hamas, hiding amongst civilians, firing from close to hospitals, and the fact that, you know, there could as is being suggested, that there could probably be an ammunition dump somewhere in critical, sensitive civilian buildings. You hide it over there with the hope that the IDF doesn't attack that.
They're absolutely ridiculous. The Israeli army offices are in the middle of Tel Aviv. And if in a war somebody hits that Israeli army officers that would be targeting civilians, would that be the Israeli army hiding behind its civilians and using them as human shields? Is putting a rave party on occupied Palestinian territory next to Gaza, partying in a place where it has been sieged for 17 years. The calories entering the people is being calculated by the army. Every 2 years, there's a major massacre killing no less than 2,000 civilian Palestinians. Is that using human shields as tactics? Unfortunately, sir, we've been under occupation for 75 years. This Israeli state has been built on our territory, has been built on our land, has been using ethnic cleansing since 1948, again in 1967, again in 2 intifadas, again on 5 wars on that enclave called Gaza that is the biggest open-air prison history have known, has been closed for 17 years, 360 square meters with 2 million people with no work, with no life, controlling their water, controlling their ability to fish, preventing them from traveling, preventing them from communication, from living, hitting them every couple of years, killing as many civilians as possible. Today, they are asking for a complete ethnic cleansing, the removal of 2.2 Palestinians from Gaza back to Egypt or back to any other Arab country. Sir, this is only thievery. This is only a land grab that is using tactics
Khalid
of
Barrel,
ethnic
respond to
cleansing
the
use
charge
land
that
grab.
by moving
Just like what happened in
Palestinians or
1948.
trying to push them away from Gaza City, Israel is basically trying to do a land grab. You're trying to occupy that land, which should be part of Palestine as part of a future two-state solution, and you're basically trying to create facts on the ground like you have with the settlements in the West Bank.
Let's separate the two issues. First and foremost, I'm a longtime proponent of a two-state solution. I have worked for this tirelessly in my country. So I completely reject the connection between any constructive attempts to promote any kind of arrangement between Israel and the Palestinian and establish a Palestinian state to Hamas's action. Let me ask you, did the Hamas atrocities help these? It helps you get your own country and your own rights? Did it free Palestine? These atrocious attacks?
Well,
absolutely
in,
not. So
1943,
pretending
hold on,
pretending like this is about any kind. No. I will respond. I will respond.
One at a time. I can't have both guests speaking at the same time. Let Khalid Barrel complete her argument. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Want to make very clear what happened by Hamas from Gaza is not about any political objective. It is not. Pretending otherwise is hurting the Palestinian cause, and I would like you to keep that in mind because I am a proponent of the two-state solution. Now, about Gaza and the humanitarian issue. It seems like there's no way that Israel can actually act in defense of itself that would be acceptable to anyone, because obviously we would never target civilian populations. And obviously we have gone along with this issue of humanitarian corridors and trying to allow people who want to leave the area that's about to be affected. But now that's not allowed because that's displacing people. Now, the UN is supposed to open areas where they can shelter at the time. That's not allowed because that would somehow harm Hamas's causes. Hamas, meantime, is stealing from the United Nations, and whatever humanitarian efforts are being done are being curbed by Hamas, who doesn't even want its citizens to move. So it takes away their car keys and their IDs, because if the population actually does move to protect itself, then Hamas's human shield is gone. Now, about this idea of land grab, it is preposterous. There is nothing for Israel in occupying Gaza. Nothing. That is why we withdrew from Gaza, and that is why we allowed for such a long time for Hamas to fester there, because of our lack of desire to go back in and occupy Gaza. And that is a fact. Now, are we going to have to do what we need to do now to eradicate Hamas? Absolutely. So I'm asking you again, how did that help the two-state solution or the Palestinian people?
Okay, we've heard different points of view. It's an intractable debate. There's no way that there'll be a resolution, but at least we've been able to forensically look at the satellite images, the audio recordings, which really raise questions about what was first put out by the Hamas as a charge that 500 Gazans had been killed in an Israeli missile strike. The facts don't seem to add up. Very, very dangerous. I want to thank my guests for joining me and sharing their perspective. Let's move on now. The horrors of the Hamas continue to unfold. India today has accessed a new video of the October 7 Hamas attack that captures the initial moments of the siege, where Hamas terrorists can be seen gunning down a man who's with a child. Here are the details.
Bullets fired on civilians. A civilian and a kid shot at. A civilian vehicle targeted and shot at. This is proof of Hamas brutality, all caught on camera. CCTV footage from the Israeli border town of Sderot show the first moments of the surprise terror attack. The first video shows pickup trucks carrying Hamas terrorists driving through the city, targeting several vehicles on their way. The Hamas terrorists then go on to stop a civilian car, and what followed then was horrifying. The person inside the car was killed. The terrorists then released the brakes of the car and the body was dragged across the street. The second video is even more chilling. A man and a kid are seen running from their vehicles after they encountered the Hamas terrorists entering the city. In a shocking turn of events, the dreadful terrorist opened fire at the civilian and the kid. The two are seen wandering on the road seeking help. A car is seen crossing the divider. Hamas terrorists who are chasing the car shoots at the occupants of the car. The terrorists then open the doors. The car moves back, ramming the divider. More and more horrific stories and images of Hamas horror are emerging every day. The scale of the attacks still sinking in. Bureau Report, India Today.
My colleague Colonel Rajesh Pawar is at the Israel-Lebanon border. He's sending dispatches of some firing being reported from there. Let's take a look at his latest ground report.
Do you hear this? This is airborne sighting because now a missile is going to come from Lebanon side. You saw this blast. This was the air siren was for. Blast from Lebanese side into Israel, and that's when you hear siren. When something goes from here, this side, there's no siren that side. But when they fire, there's always a short siren by the time the missile actually lands. Because they have just a few seconds before can they detect the missile and they can give some kind of signal. So we are getting movement till the missile comes from that side. There's an air raid siren. Otherwise, missiles are being continuously fired from Israeli side as well. Again, you saw the blast. That was probably a blast of a missile fired by Israel. And continuous, show that. That's a missile going. You can hear the missile going, the sound. It's the daytime, so we cannot see the flash going, but we can see the sound of a missile going from this side to that side. Again, a big fire. This is artillery fire going on right now. So we are the first channel here in India and probably anywhere where you can see both Israel and Lebanon at the same time and how the firing is going on between these two. Rajesh Pawar from Lebanon-Israel border for Aaj Tak.
We're slipping into a quick break. When we come back, Israel declares a global hunt for Hamas's leadership. Details coming up on the other side. Back in a moment. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest. Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You're on board the Newstrack. Pressure is building on Israel for a ceasefire, but Israel has declared that its only mission is the complete decimation of the Hamas. This includes taking out the Hamas's top leadership that's sitting safe in Qatar. Israeli government representatives have told India Today that their hunt for Hamas also includes the leadership that's hiding abroad.
The destruction of Gaza continues unabated. The massive blast at a major hospital and a claim war momentarily pausing hostilities. Israel has the world's eyes on it, with pressure building for a ceasefire. But a focused and galvanized Israel has signaled it won't be resting until the Hamas in its entirety is obliterated. But as India Today has reported, several leaders of Hamas sit in foreign safe havens. Most notable, Hamas chairman Ismail Haniyeh, who lives in Qatar. In an explosive statement revealing plans to act even against those living protected lives, the Israeli government has declared war on these foreign targets.
We will destroy Hamas's military presence because we cannot exist with this ISIS-like terror organization meters away from our home. We are saying that every member of Hamas is a dead man walking.
Israel has claimed to have eliminated several key Hamas figures in its ongoing airstrikes in Gaza. But the true masterminds, including Haniyeh and Mohammed Deif, alias the Guest, who heads Hamas's military Al-Qassam brigades, responsible for the October 7th terror attack, remain elusive. Haniyeh is still visible and his location largely known. But Deif, the architect of the October 7th attack, continues to evade. A minister on Netanyahu's high-powered war cabinet tells it plainly.
These terrorist organizations are causing hell for Israelis and for Palestinians for already more than almost 20 years. Once and for all, we must defeat Hamas and jihadi Islam in Gaza Strip in order to stop this misery. They must be defeated, and we will not stop until they will be defeated.
The world's most formidable intelligence machinery has woken from a shocking slumber, where it was caught off guard, resulting in a terrorist attack. And now, Israel's famed covert operations units, renowned for avenging the deaths of Israelis anywhere in the world, will have kicked into action. Whether in days, or weeks, or months, the blood of 1,400 Israelis means it is safe to assume Israel won't rest until Hamas is buried. Bureau Report, India Today.
This is where we wrap up the Newstrack tonight. For your time and your trust, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you at 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye, good night.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
A desperate struggle to save the wounded. Injured patients lying on floors, awaiting surgery, often without anesthesia. This as Israeli strikes continue to pound on the besieged Gaza. Hamas blamed the hospital carnage in Gaza on an Israeli attack, putting the number of dead at 500 initially. The toll as in dispute. Officials at the Al Ahli hospital described it in the hundreds. Others in Gaza said it was closer to 250. Israeli military claimed that an errant rocket fired by a group called Islamic Jihad fell on the parking lot of the hospital, causing the deadly explosion.
Intelligence from few sources that we have in our hands indicates that the Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza. I repeat, this is the responsibility of Islamic Jihad that killed innocents in the hospital in Gaza.
The bombing nonetheless provoked huge protests across Middle East. Demonstrators gathered outside missions of countries they blamed for Gaza's humanitarian crisis. In Tel Aviv, US President Joe Biden called upon Israel to allow some humanitarian aid